Hi, everyone. Today, I want to talk about our first part one of our research project. So, basically, for the rest of the semester, we're really going to focus on sort of an extended research project. The first part of this is really going to be focusing on just the process of collecting and analyzing different sources. And so, if you've ever done like an annotated bibliography or, well, really an annotated bibliography, a literature review, maybe what these are doing is you're getting a little bit of background information on a topic. You're really kind of doing a deep dive into whatever that topic is to find out as much as you can. For our sake, what we're actually going to be doing is spending a little bit more time getting experience with different types of sources, right? So, for example, um, if you haven't looked at a peer-reviewed journal article before, that's one of the sources that we'll be including for this project. If you haven't used a podcast for research before, that's a different type of source that we'll be using. So you have 8 different sources that are going to be required. And then 2 of them can be anything you want. If you look, there's a link that you can click here. This is a worksheet that I've created for you. It's a little cheesy to make a worksheet. I'm not going to lie. But the reason that I made a worksheet is so that we can really focus on what's important for this project, which is the process. I'm much more interested in you being able to really just focus on finding different types of sources and then citing those sources and analyzing those sources. And I don't want you to spend a whole lot of time just kind of wrapping your head around what this assignment is. So I went ahead and just made it as simple as possible, and I even color coded it. And we'll look at that in a second. Actually, no, let's look at that first. Okay. So here's research project part 1, collecting and analyzing sources, right? So you'll just put your name, the topic that you've chosen, which by the way, is an assignment for this week, and your research question. Your research question just needs to be a slightly more focused, well, not slightly, more focused part of your topic, which is where you're asking something, about what you really want to know more about. So for example, if I am wanting to write a paper about vampires, I say as I look at Halloween decor in the background, maybe my research question would be something like, what are some of the primary literary themes in the vampire novel Carmilla, right? Or Dracula? And so then I'm really getting specific and I'm looking at one thing about vampires. Okay, like how are vampires depicted differently in Dracula versus Carmilla, or Dracula versus Interview with a Vampire? Okay, and so basically, I have something that I'm really wanting to know more about. I could say something like, I want to work at a zoo in the future. So maybe my topic is zoos. Then my research question might be something like, how do you get a job at a zoo? What kind of education do you need? Or it could be something like, are zoos ethical? So basically, what we're doing when we're focusing on a research question is we're getting more specific towards a thesis for some future research, paper or whatever that we'll be making, where we'll be answering that question. Okay. And by the way, you don't necessarily have to answer this research question. Right now, this is just a way of helping us focus on what type of research we want to find based on a certain angle. Okay. All right, let's look at this. So first one is going to be a long form news source. Okay. And we're going to talk more about that next week. But for now, what you need to know is that this is going to be one of the types. So you will find a long form news source. You'll just want to put the author, the title, a link to the news source, some summary here, and then a quote. Another option that you have instead of a quote, and this will be relevant for some of these future ones. For example, let's say you find a social media post and it's a meme, okay, or it's a video. And maybe that video isn't just someone talking, but it's maybe footage of something happening, like a play if you're writing about sports, or it could be footage of some sort of news event happening, right? Instead of someone speaking. Then you could use an excerpt as well, or an image. If you might have a chart, a graph, something else. It doesn't have to be written words. Just kind of keep that in mind. It might be helpful in the future. Okay, so social media posts, peer-reviewed article in a scholarly journal, interview, survey. By the way, these are going to be an interview that you make yourself, like an interview that you do, a survey that you create, a documentary, a podcast, and a book. I put a book on here kind of as an afterthought, to be honest. And the reason that I did is because sometimes you'll still have professors who will say something like, one of your sources needs to be a book. And this is kind of an old-fashioned way of, making an assignment, because books are still very important, but they are less and less required in especially undergraduate education. But I want to make sure that you can cite a book just in case it comes up. Okay, and find books. And then source 9 and 10, those can be whatever you want. At the end of this project, you'll want to make sure that you have a works cited page. And so, the focus of this project is going to be on finding and analyzing sources, but citing sources is still really important. You don't want to be losing points in future projects because you don't know how to cite. And frankly, one of the things that I was thinking about when I was making this project was, I want you to be able to use different types of sources. And I don't want you to be hesitating about using a certain type of source because you're like, I don't know how to cite that. So I want to make sure that we're using citations of different types of sources in this paper or in this project so that whenever you're moving forward, you're like, I want to use a documentary as a source, and you're confident enough because you know how to cite a documentary. Okay. So I'm going to be making smaller assignments to help you, get the information that you need for these different types of sources and learn how to format citations for these. That'll be part of our future work. What I really want you to focus on for this week is figuring out what topic you want to write about, okay, or learn about for this project. And it really can be anything. I don't want you to feel limited to things that are kind of typical English class types of topics, like some of the things that we wrote about for our controversial issues discussion board, for example. Those can be fine. Some of us are really drawn to those types of topics. I loved ethics class, for example, in college. But, if you want to write about Vampire Diaries, again, can't get vampires off my mind, or something like that, just don't feel discouraged from doing something that's a little bit more like pop culture. Or if you want to write about sports because that's like all you're thinking about right now because, the Diamondbacks are going to the World Series. Okay, great. Write about sports. Choose whatever kind of topic you want. And then we're going to be moving forward and trying to find different sources about that topic. Please don't feel discouraged to choose a topic because you're worried, like, I don't know if there's going to be a documentary about that. We'll figure that out later. For now, just choose a topic that you feel interested in, that you think is compelling to you personally, and then you should be good to go. All right. So if you want to look down here, you can see the rubric for this project. It's very simple. Basically, I'm going to be looking at the sources that you choose. The source needs to fit the required type of source. So just make sure that if you are citing a peer-reviewed article in a scholarly journal, that it is that. And then the sources should be diverse. Again, part of that's going to be if you just do what's required, then it should be diverse. But they should also be good quality sources. And so if I'm noticing that you don't have an author, that I've never heard of this website, that this seems really old, then I might be looking at it and like making sure that it is like a good quality source. And so that's going to be worth 6 points. Form details. This is making sure that you're filling out the summary and the quote very accurately, and any of the other information as well, title and things like that. Make sure that you choose a good quote. Sometimes we just choose like an easy quote, something that just like kind of has the topic in general in it. It doesn't have to cover everything, but it might be just a quote that you find particularly interesting or that has a good little piece of information in it. It doesn't have to capture the whole idea, okay? Surface level concerns, 1 point. Okay, same amount of points. It's not that many points. Just make sure that you're checking for typos and that you're doing your best to use kind of a more academic type of tone, something just a little bit more formal. It doesn't have to be super stilted. And then we're going to have a works cited page. Again, this is going to be worth kind of a lot of points on this assignment just because I want to make sure that I'm giving enough energy towards citations that this is something that we'll really get strong and confident in. Again, all of these things are things that we'll talk about more as we work on the project, but for now, just focus on that topic. All right, everyone, have a good day, and I will see you next time.